Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
So, joined by Stig Abell and Carol Malone, and it is to the Times we start, and the HIV drug approval in the High Court today.
And this is actually, and we'll get to the Mail in a minute, which tries to make this sort of a moral case when it really isn't. There's an argument about cost-benefit analysis here, which is this costs a drug treatment that will prevent prophylactically, so in advance of anything, people spreading HIV. And it costs 20 or 30 million quid. And so there is a question mark about whether that's a good use of NHS money or not. It's a perfectly legitimate question to ask because the NHS is a finite level of resource. Do you want to spend 20 or 30 million pounds on that versus, as NHS England maintain, say spending it on cystic fibrosis? And they have to make a decision. A sort of utilitarian approach would be what can achieve the greatest good to the greatest number. You work that out and then you can make a decision about a drug or not. What makes this kind of shameful is two things. One is, we'll get to how the Mail have treated it, which is has this more than a whiff of homophobia about it. But the second question is the NHS England tried to duck this as their decision because they basically said, the reason they're in court is they said this is a local authority decision because it's about health education. This is not for us to decide. And the court has said, no. You make this decision. You make a decision what money is spent on. Which of course they should do.
They also said more than that. They said it's not their responsibility, implying that, you know, if people are irresponsible and don't use contraceptives during sex, it's their own fault. But the point of all this is that, you know, there are 104,000 people with HIV currently in the UK. 85,000 of those are getting treatment every year. Now, I don't know how much that is costing, but I suspect it's going to be more than the £20 million a year they're saying that giving this drug to people would cost. And isn't the whole point about medicine? It's preventing diseases, not letting people get them and then having to spend lots of money trying to cure them and then maybe not curing them. It would be interesting to know how much a person who has HIV costs the NHS a year. And I suspect it'll be less than more than £400 a month. And this pill is supposed to reduce chances of infection by 86%. I mean, that's huge. And whether, you know, it's not a moral issue, it's about preventing a disease. HIV is a disease. And if we can prevent it in one fell swoop, let's do it. We're trying to do it with cancer, we're trying to do it with obesity, we're trying to do it with all sorts of things. But here we have a drug that can just about cure it.
And that's why it becomes, I think, a cost-benefit analysis, because you could say, take the cystic fibrosis thing, which is, you know, deliberately chosen by NHS England because it's
to be emotional and
for
people to get cross about it.
But ultimately, if you're saying you can either practice safe sex, you can buy a condom for a couple of quid and not transmit HIV, versus treating cystic fibrosis. This may be the only means of treating it. At least there's a debate to have. But what the Mail have done, and what NHS England have allowed the Mail to do, because, I mean, you can blame the Mail for this because they are uncomfortable with what they consider to be the homosexual lifestyle in that very stuffy, awkward manner of the Daily Mail. But NHS England have basically given them permission to do this because they've basically implied in their own statements this is about a lifestyle. This could encourage poor behaviour. It's effectively saying to people, take this pill and then you can be promiscuous.
And yet on exactly the same argument on that, you are allowed to get the emergency contraceptive pill in advance, even if you're under the age of 16, if you go on holiday or something like that, if your contraception fails. So a condom might fail in these circumstances too, even though safe sex is being practiced.
And you know, you've also got to accept that a lot of people are having sex in circumstances where they are not in control. They might be drunk, they might be drugged, whatever. So they're going to be doing things in that situation that they can't control. They're not capable of controlling. Yes, people might say that's their own fault, but, you know, it's not about that. What the Mail does do inside, which I think a lot of people have sympathy for, they look at people who've had to pay privately for stuff, like a lady who was told, a 56-year-old lady who was told she could only have one cataract done on the NHS and she had to pay for the other one herself. I mean, that is not good either. One guy had to pay £9,000 to have both done privately.
Again, this is the Mail playing to its choir here, playing to its elderly choir.
But I kind of get that, don't you? If you're going blind and you've paid into a system all of your life, and suddenly you say you can't have it, yes, you'd be cross.
If my child had cystic fibrosis between the age of 2 to 5, and the NHS has got an option of taking up the payment for a trial drug that would cure that illness, and it's spending the money instead on something else, but that's the point. It's a finite. That's why it's perfectly legitimate to have the debate. It's a finite resource. You've got to spend the money somewhere. What can do the greatest amount of good to the greatest number of people? And you might say cataract blights people over the age of 60. The only means of dealing with that is an operation that costs a certain amount of money. People who do not want to transmit HIV can take the responsibility to practice safe sex and therefore limit it. You can have that debate. What the Mail are doing by saying skewed values, it's making a judgment about a lifestyle, which is kind of
it's making judgment about homosexuals and the way they live. However, it is an interesting figure that last year the NHS spent £80 million on prescribing paracetamol for people. They pay, when you can get a packet in a chemist for 19 or 20 pence, what they've got to look at is how they're spending their money and what they're spending it on, and how, the big story a few weeks ago was about this, saying that they are paying 4 times more for paracetamol than anybody else is. Why is that? Why are they doing that?
But do you think people are still under the illusion that national insurance actually is ring-fenced towards their pensions and the National Health Service, where really it's just another means of having a tax on people, and there's no ring-fencing. Decisions like this have to be made, and if you're related to any of these people who've got any of these illnesses,
exactly. And these are difficult, and actually that's why I think it does a disservice to it to take this into a realm of people being uncomfortable about gay people, which is what the Mail are doing. Actually, this is a perfectly legitimate debate to have about how you spend your money. And if it's not about this, it could be about treating obese people. It could be about treating transgendered people. These are difficult decisions to make in the world of a finite set of resources within NHS.
You take it down the line and you withdraw treatment from, or you'll get people out of hospital who've got cirrhosis of the liver through alcohol abuse.
Well, exactly. So where does it... And the thing is, the court actually said that health bosses had made a mistake in arguing that it wasn't their responsibility. You can't discriminate against people for the kind of illness they have. What kind of
and
national
the fact
health
they've
would it
tried
be?
to, and the real scandal, which we're not really talking about because of the interest in the issue itself, is NHS England trying to duck what is clearly their decision to make. And that's what the court has said. If they appeal this, it will be a colossal disgrace for them to appeal this.
So the eye also going on that, NHS giving green light for drugs that stops HIV. But let's move on, shall we, to